Well, welcome everyone. As Andrew would say, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Um, Happy New Year, Merry Christmas, Happy Thanksgiving. I guess he doesn't go that far. This is your old pal Brian in Western Wisconsin, or Richmond, Wisconsin, to be exact, with our weekly podcast from that '70s pod. Andrew's in standing by in Orlando, Florida. We have a little bit of light rain in the area. It's overcast today. What's it like there in Andrew country in Orlando?
Very humid. Thank you for starting off today. On this fine Tuesday evening. It is very, very humid here in Orlando. Kind of windy, but we're to that time. Happy Memorial Day, everyone. Um, or I guess Memorial Day weekend is kind of wrapping up here. It's back to that time frame where we're about to start hurricane season. So it's really nice and then it gets humid and then it rains. Like the clouds get dark really quick and you rather get a really big thunderstorm or just a quick like 10-minute shower. And that happens almost every day now. May, June, July. So we're just starting that. We hope everybody had a nice Mother's Day a few weeks ago and a nice Memorial Day. We are jumping into a topic today that, speaking of holidays, you and I discussed a handful of times, and then Christmas Day, I really pitched this topic because I felt like it'd be interesting to do. But before we get there, it is sports related. So I guess we are transitioned back to, here, 2025, talk about sports. Um, I can't believe I've never been this closely focused on basketball before. But rooting for the Timberwolves, that was really cool to see them back in the Final Four. We do talk about hockey here. I feel like your picks might happen. You said the Panthers and the Stars in the finals, correct?
Yeah, the Panthers have pretty much rolled through the Eastern Conference Finals. They beat the Hurricane in three straight games. They did lose last night, so the series is 3-1 in favor of Florida right now. But uh, I believe I'm not sure where Game Five is. I don't know who the higher seed is. I think Carolina might be the higher seed. So
It is.
uh, the series moves back to Carolina tomorrow night for Game Five. Looking for Florida to wrap it up. Dallas and Edmonton. Edmonton's ahead 2 games to one. The series moves to well, I guess game four is in Edmonton tonight. So the Oilers could go up 3 games to one, but looking for Dallas to tie the series tonight and go on to win.
Yeah, I'm kind of, I'm rooting for the Hurricanes just because I don't want to see the Panthers repeat. I don't like repeat champions. Maybe if it's my team, I'd be cool with it. But like I want to see Stars and Panther or Hurricanes make it. Uh Thunder did go over on the Timberwolves last night, in case anybody's interested. They won with 2 points left, or 2 points with like 3 seconds left in the game. And then we have the Knicks and the Pacers tonight as Indiana leads 2-1. Even if I'm not immersed into the hockey world, the baseball world, and the basketball world until it comes to the playoffs, I've always was interested in the players and teams themselves, rather if it's the uniforms, looking at the logos, or individual players. Like I thought Tim Duncan was so cool, even though I never watched a Spurs game. And then Tiger Woods. And I would do all this stuff as a kid because in second grade we had reading time and you can rather read an SSR book. I forgot what SSR stands for, some point system we had, or you can read the latest magazine that got shipped to the school. And my wing always got Sports Illustrated for kids. So as a second grader, that's how I knew the Titans and the Rams were in the Super Bowl. That's how I knew about Dirk Nowitzki, Kobe, back in the day, it was really big in baseball. It was like Alex Rodriguez and Mark McGuire, and then you saw all these advertisements for crackers and yogurt and all that stuff. So, Sports Illustrated for kids was something that really meant a lot to me. second and third grade, kind of fourth grade as well. I always wanted to be the first one to read it. And then I learned that Sports Illustrated was actually a real thing. Um, probably that same year, I think you had a Vikings issue. And then you got another one, and then you got another one. You're like, yeah, it's like a weekly magazine. Even fast forward to when I moved to Orlando, and my brother Eric and I think you signed us up for a Sports Illustrated issue or something like that, even though we didn't really read it that often. You're like, oh, it's just nice to get something every week in the mail, like to look forward to something. I used to do that. But you did that long before you were a teenager. I had this episode in mind on Christmas Day because I really enjoyed that Pro Wrestling Magazine episode we filmed back in September of last year. So if you didn't get it by now, today's episode is about Sports Illustrated magazine. We might talk about some other magazines, but we talked about movies, musics, TV shows. Another entertainment pastime for a lot of people is reading. I don't know if you were a big book reader back when in the 70s and as we transition to the 80s, a part of this podcast, but today's all about Sports Illustrated. I mean, where do we begin? Do you remember seeing Sports Illustrated for the first time? Was it in the store or like at school? What's your first memory about I'm assuming your number one favorite magazine of all time.
Well, the first issue that I ever saw, I never really paid attention to magazines in the store or the newsstand, as it were, um, when I was a real little kid. And for some reason, and I don't know why, Andrew, that my dad signed us up, or I think he asked my brother Bruce if he would be interested in having a weekly magazine called Sports Illustrated, and and Bruce was the one that okayed it. Um, so I really don't know the story behind it. You know how my dad came to um, want to sign up for Sports Illustrated, or if someone was selling him a magazine subscription at work, or he worked in Edina, Minnesota, and as so often the case, kids are selling um, candy bars or magazine subscriptions, for as long as time can has existed. Well, maybe not back in the 1500s, but um, I'm guessing somebody probably asked my dad if he would buy a magazine subscription to help out a kid or something. I really don't know how it happened, but all of a sudden, I remember one day looking at the mail on the table, and this would have been August of 1971. And there was this issue of Sports Illustrated laying on the table, and there was a Chicago Cub pitcher named Ferguson Jenkins that was on the cover, and it said something to the effect of Ferguson Jenkins of the Red Hot Cubs. The Cubs were making a run for the playoffs at this time, and I just thought, wow, this looks so cool, this magazine. And most of the pictures inside the magazine were black and white, but the cover was in living color, as they say. And it was just this really cool picture. Now, I had been collecting baseball cards at the time, so I was aware of who Ferguson Jenkins was. I was aware of what the Cubs uniforms looked like, but it was still cool to see this guy in action throwing a baseball, because baseball cards are basically just a posed picture, but this was an action shot. And up until that time, Andrew, I had never really seen action photos because baseball cards didn't really do that. Like I said, they were all posed pictures of somebody holding a bat or someone pretending to throw a pitch or catch a ball or something. But there was no really action shots on baseball cards. So to see this cover of a magazine and then flip through the magazine and see action shots of someone sliding into a base, or crossing home plate or hitting a home run or something or catching a ball at the wall. And that was really cool. I was just really intrigued by it. And I didn't know why the magazine came to our house, but it had my dad's name on it in the lower left corner and with our address. And I thought, well, this must not be a mistake, because I knew what addresses on envelopes look like and, regular mail. So I thought, well, this must be on purpose. And and I think my mom said, your dad got a subscription. And I didn't even know what subscription meant. I wasn't familiar with that word. I knew what prescription was. And I probably said, what do you mean prescription? But I don't know for sure if that's what I said or not. So anyway, that was the very first magazine. It was in August of 1971, and it came every week. And as it kept coming, well, at first I thought it was going to be baseball every week. But then I think the second issue might have been college football because that was going right into the college football season. And then I remember a race car driver because it wasn't Indy 500, but it was some other race that happens in the fall. Um, and it had a race car driver named Jackie Stewart on the cover because he had won some big race. And and then from there it went into football. And I don't remember the first football cover I ever saw, but then it was time for the World Series, and I remember this picture, this cover photo of Frank Robinson of the Baltimore Orioles, and it was this majestic swing, or this picture of him swinging a bat, and you could see his number on the back of his jersey, number 20, and it said Robinson right above it. And I knew who Frank Robinson was, and it was such a cool picture. And it was talking about the playoffs. And after that, it went into the World Series and the Orioles and the Pittsburgh Pirates, and they were on the cover of the World Series issue. So it was just fun every week, just anticipating what the cover of Sports Illustrated was going to look like, and and whoever the photographers were of Sports Illustrated at that time, and even today, some of the best photography you're going to see in a magazine anywhere. These photographers have worked at Sports Illustrated at some point in their lives because they take such amazing pictures. And even as a 9-year old kid, I realized that. And so, right, I was hooked on Sports Illustrated from the beginning.
So I think I found it right away. This is August 30th, 1971. I'm assuming you were probably getting ready for school one morning. Um, as
Well,
it's
I was probably coming home from school because the mail came in the afternoon, so I probably saw it after school.
So yep, there he is. Here comes the Cubs is the pitcher, which that's funny you just said the comment about the photography because his glove is kind of blurry in that picture, which I get it. It's the 70s. I don't know if they had like shutter speed on their camera. And then I think this is the one you were talking about, Robinson referring to the World Series, correct?
Your picture's actually frozen here, so I can't see what you're doing. But yeah, it was Frank Robinson that was on the cover of the World Series issue.
Okay. Is that better for my picture? Or is it still frozen?
Well, I have a blank screen now. So, but anyway,
Okay.
um, so then one thing led to another, and 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 I got to the point where um, I was just hoping Sports Illustrated would show something local. I mean, I lived in St. Paul. I was a Twins fan, a Gopher fan, college football, um, a Viking fan, a North Star fan, and I was just hoping Sports Illustrated would print something about my local team. And I don't remember any Viking shots or any Vikings being featured on the cover of Sports Illustrated. But the Vikings did have a playoff game in on Christmas Day of 1971, and they were beaten by the Dallas Cowboys 20-12. And there was a picture in Sports Illustrated during the playoff issue I think the cover photo was Garo Upremian of the Miami Dolphins kicking a game-winning field goal against the Kansas City Chiefs. At that time, it was the longest NFL game in history, playoff or otherwise. They went 6 quarters, and Miami finally won 27-24 to knock off the mighty Chiefs. And Garo Upremian, the kicker of Miami, was on the cover of Sports Illustrated for that playoff issue. And I was thumbing through all the pictures, and one of the pictures in there was Roger Staubach of the Cowboys throwing a pass over a leaping Alan Page of the Vikings. Alan Page was the most valuable player in the NFL that year. So that was cool to see the picture, even though the Vikings lost. But I actually that was the first time I had seen a picture in Sports Illustrated of any Minnesota player or team. So that was exciting. And then the Super Bowl issue came in January of 1972, and that launched a lifelong tradition for me, Andrew. As you know, the very first Super Bowl issue I ever saw from Sports Illustrated covered Super Bowl six. The Miami Dolphins and Dallas Cowboys. A running back for Dallas named Dwayne Thomas was on the cover of this magazine. And to this day, I still have the magazine. I have all the magazines, matter of fact, that I've already been talking about in a box in a garage somewhere. They might not even be in good shape anymore. I don't know. But I've collected, at least tried to collect, every Super Bowl issue from Sports Illustrated since that first time in 1972, recapping Super Bowl six. And I have also, over the years, have acquired, thanks to you, Andrew, and another a guy I work with. The two of you have combined um, to get me the first five Super Bowl issues as well. Super Bowls one, two, three, four, and five before my dad had a subscription. So that's kind of the focus of this whole program today, talking about Super Bowl issues, Sports Illustrated, because they have the best coverage when it comes to the Super Bowl, to the World Series, the NHL playoffs, NBA, college sports. Um, when the Twins won World Series in '87 and '91, I have all those issues, even though I didn't have subscriptions at the time. I just made sure I bought the issue. And to this day, like I mentioned, Sports Illustrated no longer is a weekly issue anymore. They just print commemorative issues and monthly issues now. So when I want to pick up an issue covering the Super Bowl now, I have to send for a commemorative issue through Sports Illustrated. Usually costs about $20, and that's the way they've been doing it the past 4 or 5 years. And so I've been keeping up. I still have every Super Bowl issue that Sports Illustrated has ever printed.
So was this might be a three-part question real quick. Was this something you had in mind? Were you collecting like all the super like all Sports Illustrated and you just happen to hang on to the Super Bowl ones over time? Or when you got this first one in 1972, you're like, I'm gonna make this a tradition. I'm gonna get all these. Or did it just happenstance after a few years? You're like, oh wow, I have this streak going. I might as well keep it.
Well, my dad kept up his subscription as long as we were all a family living in St. Paul. And I think even when we moved to Wisconsin, he kept that subscription going for quite a while. Um, and I can remember sometimes, my brother and I would fight over who got to look at it first. Um, but I kept all the issues. I'm a bit of a pack rat when it comes to things like that. I have most magazines, whether it's Sports Illustrated, wrestling magazines, um, rock and roll magazines, or People magazines, anything that I've bought over the years, from 40 years ago to even more recent things like this one that I'm holding up right now. It's from Life magazine, and my favorite rock band on the cover, Kiss. Um, and it's just something that I always hang on to magazines. I never throw them away. I have stacks of magazines all over the house. Don't know what I'm going to do with them. They might be worth money someday. Who knows? I matter of fact got this one for you, Andrew. Never given it to you though. It's of Charlie Brown and Snoopy and the Peanuts gang. Um, so I just love magazines, and so does my wife, your mom. Um, Here's another one of Rocky, and I just keep them all. I love magazines, whether it be Sports Illustrated or any other magazine that I've collected over the years. Not necessarily collect, but just buy, and just because I want to read an article or see something in the magazine, I usually hang on to them. I don't let them go.
We will maybe jump on some other magazines today, but when it comes to, we did a Super Bowl episode. We did like a two-part episode back at the start of the year in January. And I know I mentioned Sports Illustrated a little bit because, as you said, you like to collect them. I don't know if there's a specific one you collected, if you had the specific area. So at the top of this episode, I said second grade is when it really spoke out to me. I would try to collect them, not collect them, but always be the first one to read them. And then we had to like share with other people in the group. But once it was done, I would try to put them in my desk, in case we did some art project or something. And I had to cut them up for a collage. But I never really had them. I never really hung on to them. That was just a big thing in second, third grade, and fourth grade. So Sports Illustrated Kids and Sports Illustrated in general, because that was such a big thing for me in elementary school. Was this only really at home for you, or were people talking about it and bringing it to school, or did you see it like in the doctor's office or the dentist's office or at the store, or is Sports Illustrated strictly this was in the mail at my parents' place?
Actually, at school, when I went to Monroe Junior and Senior High School in St. Paul in the mid '70s, it was uh, a treat to go to the library, and and they would sometimes have Sports Illustrated came out on Fridays. The new issue always came out on Friday, so sometimes it would be a treat to go into the school library, and they would already have the new issue there before I even got home and saw it. So since my brother would always confiscate the magazine before I would get to it at home, I would look at it at the school library. And I can remember one time this would have been in 1973 during the football season, so October, November. O.J. Simpson was on the cover, and it had some wonderful pictures of O.J. In the magazine because that was the year. This was back when there was a 14 game schedule. This was the year that O.J. Simpson ran for 2,000 yards in a 14 game schedule. Now most players can't do that now in a 17 game schedule. Although Jamal or not, I can't think of his name. Was it Derrick Henry that did it last year? Uh, for somebody in the NFL. But I'm sorry.
I think so. I think
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, but to gain 2,000 yards in a season is an incredible feat. Eric Dickerson did it once. He holds the all-time record at 2,105 yards, I think. Adrian Peterson almost broke that at 2,097 in what year was that? 2017, I think. No, well, it was even sooner than that. But anyway, um, so O.J. Simpson was attempting to break 2,000 yards in a 14 game season, and he did it. He finished the year at 2003, uh, and it was just it was big news. And I was looking at this magazine at the school library in 1973, and it was just so cool to sit, at one of the big tables in the library and they had the magazines on these in these special covers and stuff. And so uh, to look at that and see the color photos, it was just really cool. And when I got home, the my brother had the magazine, and I made the comment to him, "Yeah, I saw it at school. It's really cool." And so yeah, we had that luxury, I guess, to have Sports Illustrated come to our house, and seeing Super Bowl issues. 1973 is when the Vikings went to Super Bowl eight, and after the '73 season, so it was 1974. And seeing Larry Zonka of the Dolphins on the cover, and you could see a Viking named Jeff Seaman trying to tackle him, but Zonka had this incredible game. So that's the first time I saw a Minnesota Viking on the cover. No, I take that back. They had a cover shot of Franz Harkington during the '73 season, and I still have that one. Well, like I said, I still have them all, and it's just a cool cover photo of Franz Harkington going back to pass, and you can see the Packers in the background because they were playing the Packers that day. So to see that, finally getting to see a Minnesota team on the cover of Sports Illustrated, and always hoping that there would be a Minnesota team on the cover of Sports Illustrated. And over the years, the Twins have been on the cover, and Rod Carew many times, and when the Twins were winning World Series in '87 and '91, and Vikings have been on the cover many, many times. My all-time favorite Viking, Chuck Foreman, has been on the cover, and Adrian Peterson, of course, and so it was always exciting to get that magazine and wonder what was going to be on the cover, who was going to be on the cover, and what the cover story was going to be about. And hey, maybe if we flip the pages, there might be a story about the North Stars or Twins or Vikings. They might not be a cover story, but they might be in the magazine somewhere. So I would look through that magazine from cover to cover to see if there was anything about my local team. And even if there wasn't, there maybe, like I said before, the pictures were so amazing, and maybe there would be a player from another team who I had a baseball card of, and it's like, oh, I maybe want to read about this, and what is Jack Clark of the San Francisco Giants? Why is he pictured in the magazine here? I got a baseball card of him. I'm going to read this article and see what this guy's all about. I have his statistics on the baseball card, but maybe I want to read a little bit more about him. So Sports Illustrated was just a wonderful window into the world of sports for me, whether it be hockey, baseball, basketball, college stuff, tennis. Oh, amazing pictures whenever major tournaments were rolling around: the U.S. Open, Wimbledon, the French Open, the Australia Open, or any type of tennis tournament. They had amazing pictures of players back in the '70s and '80s. I can remember amazing pictures of John McEnroe when he had this bushy long hair and a red headband, and diving all over the place. And they would have still shots of him diving for a tennis ball, and their photography was just so amazing. And the same with even sports I didn't really care about, like horse racing, the Kentucky Derby, the Belmont, the Preakness. They had amazing pictures of horse racing, even though I wasn't into that sort of thing, or auto racing. It was just all sports. They even had an issue with Hulk Hogan on the cover when WW, at that time it was WWF, was making such a huge splash in the early '80s, and they had Hogan on the cover with his face all contorted, and it referred to him as pro wrestling's top banana, and it had pictures from all different kinds of wrestler. I think Warrior was in there, and the Missing Link, and Big John Studd, and they did a wonderful article on pro wrestling, even though people wouldn't call that a sport. But Sports Illustrated just covered everything. And oh my goodness, boxing. I don't know how many times Muhammad Ali was on the cover, and just great pictures of Muhammad Ali boxing Joe Frazier, and George Foreman and Ken Norton. And uh, oh man, the photography was just great on some of those pictures as well. So Sports Illustrated just covered everything, Andrew. And like I said, it was a window to the world for me because you can't always see everything on TV. TV can't be everywhere at all times. So Sports Illustrated was. And and the Olympics too. Great pictures from the Olympics I remember in 72, 76, 80, 84. Just great stuff that Sports Illustrated has done over the years.
And for some people who might not know about Sports Illustrated, how would you describe it to them? Is it just recaps of the week before of games, or is it like summaries of the season coming up? Is it tributes? Like, how would you say, like, oh, it's a magazine about sports, but what did they actually cover and write about back in the 70s?
Well, they would always have a cover story about whatever was pertinent, and keep in mind that sports, like I said earlier, Sports Illustrated came out on Friday. We would get it in the mail on Friday, and that was good for a weekly issue. And um, they would usually have things that happened on the Sunday before that Friday when it was delivered. So, for example, Andrew, if the Super Bowl well, the Super Bowl is always on a Sunday, so we would have that issue, the Super Bowl issue, on Friday, 5 days later. So that's how good they were at getting it out. The only time it would be pushed an extra day is the NCAA men's basketball, college basketball final is always on Monday, right? Monday night is always when the NBA or not NBA but NCAA college men's basketball final is, and and Sports Illustrated would make an exception to have that final in the magazine in your mailbox 4 days later on Friday. So it was simply amazing that they could get a national magazine published and out to its customers by Friday. It was on the newsstands actually by Thursday, and in your mailbox if you got a subscription on Friday. So that's how good they were, and that's how recent it was. It wasn't like um, uh, some of the other magazines where maybe you wouldn't see it for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, uh, in like a monthly magazine. So that's how pertinent it was. They had stories pretty much right up to date, within 4 or 5 days of when it showed up in your mailbox. So that was really cool. And I can remember when I went off and lived on my own that I got myself a subscription because wherever I lived on my own after leaving mom and dad, I wanted that magazine because number one, it's cool to have something in your mailbox every week. Because usually you'd open the mailbox and there'd be nothing in there. So it was cool to know that at least once a week you were going to get that magazine. And number two, I just like getting the magazine. I mean, I like having that every single week to look at. And when I was living alone, that was kind of my thing to read for the week. I wouldn't try to read it all in one night. I'd maybe read the cover story and then read it throughout the week, kind of space it out until the next one came the following Friday. So that was kind of my company for a while, and I think I kept getting Sports Illustrated for several years before it just got to be kind of expensive. And um, then I just bought magazines I wanted if it featured Twins, North Stars, Vikings, whatever, Super Bowl issues, World Series issues. Um, uh, because the subscriptions got to be kind of expensive. And once I had a family, couldn't really afford that anymore. So then I just bought issues that I specifically wanted instead of getting it every week.
Was that the only sports magazine back then? Because I know there was sports news. Eventually, I remember this giant magazine that ESPN came out with. But in the 70s, was it just Sports Illustrated?
There used to be something called the Sporting News.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
that was more in newspaper form. And that was also a weekly magazine. I don't remember how up to date that was, but it was kind of like a bigger well, not a bigger version, but it was kind of like a newspaper in magazine form. It was a little bigger than a magazine, but smaller than a newspaper. And so that and I bought a couple of those and looked at them, but the problem with that is it's not magazine quality in terms of a glossy finish and stuff. And so trying to keep the Sporting News is a magazine now, but it used to be, like I said, kind of a newspaper form with the paper and that the print and all that. So that would turn yellow over time, and I don't think I saved any of those. I didn't buy very many of them, but I don't think I saved any of those. Um, so yeah, there were ESPN came out sometime in the 80s, and that was more of a picture magazine than featuring articles and stuff. I think my father-in-law bought a subscription for my oldest son because I remember those magazines being in the house, and uh, and they were addressed to my oldest son. So I think that was something his grandpa set up. I myself would not have bought that magazine. I didn't think I mean, the quality was good, but I didn't think the writing was especially that great. The photos were kind of cool, but Sports Illustrated by that time was, I guess, the premier magazine if you wanted to keep in touch what was happening in the world of sports.
Well, how much was a subscription back then? If you don't remember what your dad got when you moved out, was it like a monthly or a 6 month contract? And how much do you pay for it?
I think I would sign up for a year, and it would be, if I remember right, it was like $54. But that was 40 years ago. So $54 was kind of a lot of money, Andrew. But it was worth it to me to have that magazine in my mailbox every week, especially when I was a single guy. I mean, that was just something you look forward to. Um, it was getting mail because I didn't get a lot of mail from people. you know? um, Now I get too much mail. I get too much junk mail all the time, but hardly ever get anything fun in the mail anymore, unless you or your siblings send me something, or I order something myself. Um, so it was exciting to get that magazine, and and you can probably remember. Um, I'm sure you do that in the 2000s um, when you guys were you and your brother one of your brothers anyway were took up an interest in looking at wrestling magazines, and I got both you and your brother a subscription, and I explained it to you guys that that you would be getting this every week, and I got each of you your own subscription to the same magazine, so there'd be no fighting over it. So you each got it, and it came once a month, and that was your very own mail that you got once a month, and you could just take it in your room when it showed up, and you got home from school, you could take that magazine and go in your room and look at the pictures or read it or whatever. And I know your brother still has all his magazines downstairs and in my office, and I don't know where your magazines went. Maybe they're still down there too. But don't you remember that being a cool feeling, having your very own subscription to something that you could look forward to seeing once a month?
Yeah, I was confused for a quick second. You're referring to like the WWF, WWE magazine, correct?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So that's what I thought you meant. I missed that part for a quick moment. Yeah, they're still downstairs. Mine might be in I don't know exactly where mine are, but I know they're down there. And then they did their brand split, and then they had a Raw magazine and a SmackDown magazine, and you just kind of decided like I got the Raw one, and then Eric got the SmackDown one, and then they would do like promotional ones or ones you could only buy in store. But yeah, definitely, definitely, definitely. If it wasn't like a birthday card from like a grandparent, I didn't really get anything in the mail until I think that Christmas in 2001. I believe, is when you got you ordered it and then they sent you like October and November's issues. So we like opened up three each, and then you're like, yep, like now you're going to get one for like the rest of the year, I think. And you kept on renewing them. And you're great. Like you're right. It's not like I took it for granted, but like that would come out before I got it in the mail before it came out in the store. And a lot of the times they were already promoted action figures or like pay-per-view poster or stuff before it was announced on TV, before it was on the stands. And so I knew what figures were coming out or what pay-per-view was going to happen. And now that you bring that up, I'm really, 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 really grateful for that. Like that is really cool. Like no matter what grade I was in, and then we found this wrestling store catalog. I remember when we started like getting those in the mail, which I never studied when a new one of those came in. I would have like a science. I remember having the biggest science test of my sixth grade year. And my younger brother Jordan came in, just dropped this red catalog that was like 100 pages long, just full of the most random wrestling stuff in the world. And me just looking at it, and then he leaves. I'm like, this is a joke, right? Like, I'm supposed to be studying. I hated studying. Homework, I could get it done. Studying, I never knew when to stop studying. I felt like my whole night was shot. And then all of a sudden, this catalog is sitting there. But like summertime, holidays, whenever it would come, like I was so excited to get my magazine. And you're right, it was once a month. But I always felt like I was kind of getting knowledge that nobody else was getting yet when I would get a WWE magazine. That wasn't interested in anything else. I know this is about the 70s. This is about you. Um, Thank you, by the way. Making me actually sit there and reflect and think about that. A lot of the covers got ripped up or something would happen. Like a lot of my magazines aren't in good shape as Eric's, but it was really cool having those. And when we did our 50th episode, you kind of, hey, we should maybe do magazines. That would be a good idea. And you mentioned a handful of other ones. I don't know if this was more of an 80s thing, but you said like Sports Illustrated was a really big deal. And then there was stuff like People Magazine, 16, rock magazines where you can go into a Barnes and Noble and see rock magazines everywhere still. Tiger Beat. I don't think Tiger Beat's around anymore. But like if you like magazines so much, I know you bought WWE ones for us, People magazine for her mom. You know, the oldest brother, Brett, had ESPN. I'm pretty sure my sisters had J. Crew or Tiger Beat. I forgot what it was called, or Cape J Pop or something like that, or 13 Pop. But like, how big of magazines was it? Just Sports Illustrated for you, back in the 70s?
Well, when I became interested in Kiss in the very late 70s, I started trying to gather uh, as much information as I could about them. So if they were on the cover of uh, Teen Magazine or Tiger Beats, or there was a handful of them, and I don't remember the names of all of them now. They were on the cover of People Magazine one time. Um, I never bought Rolling Stone magazine, but I think they might have been on the cover of that one time too. Um, I think they were featured. They weren't on the cover, but I think they were featured in either Time or Newsweek at one point. Uh, and Usually I didn't buy Time or Newsweek because they were all world news type or politically motivated type things. Although I think there was a magazine of Steve Martin on the cover of Newsweek. Um, and I think I did buy that one, or maybe I saw that at the school library. I don't remember now. But there were just all kinds of magazines. I would buy wrestling magazines other than the Wrestler. The Wrestler was kind of the first magazines. We did an episode on that a while back, a podcast about my very first wrestling magazine. It was called The Wrestler, and I stuck with that magazine for a number of years. But I did buy some other ones. Pro Wrestling Illustrated has been around for a long time. I think they're still around. and I can remember buying one of those in the 70s. So there were wrestling magazines I would buy. I did buy a few people's magazines if there was like John Denver on the cover, or Kiss, or maybe Steve Martin. If it was something I was interested in, or something I was following, I don't want to use the word idolize, because that's you're not supposed to idolize performers, or anything other than our Lord. So, but if it was something I was into, I would buy the magazine. So yeah, you're right, Andrew. There was a lot of different things available at that time. I don't think magazines are as much a thing anymore as it used to be. Um, but for a while there in the 70s and into the 80s, there was just magazines everywhere, whether it's a gas station. Gas stations have kind of gotten away from that now. I mean, you still can pick up a magazine here and there, but uh, even grocery stores, the grocery store I work at used to have this huge 16-foot section of magazines. We don't have anything now. We have no magazines in the store, not even at the checkout lane. Uh, Walmart, Walmart, Target still have magazines at the checkout lanes, and then there's some other place in the store you can find them as well. Barnes Noble is really the only magazine store that I can think of on the national level now. But back then there was no Barnes Noble, but there were plenty of other. Uh, there was something called B. Dalton. I think that was what it was called. Uh, or B. Dalton Books. That's what it was. There was Walden Books. There was another one that I can't think of the name of it anymore. They all used to be in Maplewood Mall, and we used to hit all of them. And then when Barnes Noble came in, all of the those other ones disappeared, and Barnes Noble was the only bookstore. And I think that might have been a contract thing. I'm not sure, but so magazine stores, bookstores, they're not as prevalent as they used to be, or even when you were a kid, Andrew. Yeah, I'm sure you remember that when we used to go to Maplewood Mall in Maplewood, Minnesota, we used to go to all those bookstores, and they don't exist anymore. It's just Barnes Noble, and that's it now. Although they have an amazing selection of magazines and books, it used to be kind of fun to go to three different stores instead of just one big one.
Yeah, man, I always this always happens. I feel like it hasn't happened in a while, but like every time you and I do this show and we record, there's something I'm like, oh wow, I agree. Like I feel that same way. Not a huge book reader, but magazines, yeah, I've always been a fan of magazines. You're right. Where you work, it used to be like even if it had different names, once upon a time it was Econo Foods, and that was the coolest magazine section. Like they had every kind of magazine you can think of. And I remember going there late at night and just sitting on the tile floor in the grocery store. Um, there'd be like tornado warnings way back in the way or way back in the day when you or my mom worked there. And then we would just end up at the grocery store during this warning and we would just go in the magazine aisle to entertain us. Same with Target or Walmart or you're right, Walden Books. That was just such a thing. We would go to the Hudson Walmart and toys were a big deal to distract us, the toy aisle, and then the entertainment aisle, like the electronics and all. But they used to have this food court area, and I haven't thought about this. There was like they had the magazine section there, and you would just bring us there. You would kind of have the cart in front of the section, so you knew if any of us were trying to get out, like we would have to pass you, and we would spend. It felt like an hour, maybe it wasn't, but like really recall looking at any magazine you could think of because it was wrestling magazines, right? And then it was like WWE, and then Pro Wrestling Illustrated, PWI was another thing, or and then like highlights, I think was a kids book or a kids magazine you would see. And then as I got older, I would look at Sports Illustrated or anything that you can maybe shop for like a jersey and or something like that. And then Esquire. I started looking at that magazine sometimes because we would go to the library as well. and like I didn't care about the books or like anything else. So like while my siblings are reading like manga or manga books or anime books, I should say, I'm looking at like the magazine section or just Sports Illustrated and stuff like that. Because like what you did, I was always trying to look for Miami Dolphins stuff in Sports Illustrated. Um, so like, is there a celebrity that you remember seeing a lot of in magazines and getting sick of it? Because once upon a time, a grocery store named County Market came into our hometown, and they had magazines like around the corners by the registers in the back. And my one sister was thrilled every time they had there's these two twins that were big at Disney at the time. Is a show called The Sweet Life of Zach and Cody. And they were like on every, I hated these twins. They're so annoying. But they were like on every magazine. She got so excited, like, oh my gosh, it's Dylan and Cole or whatever their name was. And I'm like, "Pff, what? Like it was just annoying seeing their faces on every single magazine. So was there somebody back when that was just you remember seeing no matter what it was, their face was just plaster on it that it was almost annoying?
Um, well, like I said, Muhammad Ali used to be on a lot of covers, uh, not just Sports Illustrated, but any magazine. I mean, Muhammad Ali was larger than life, and it was a big deal. And when Muhammad Ali was still fighting and shooting his mouth off all the time, he was a divisive character. I mean, um, he was the most popular sports figure and the most hated sports figure at the same time because people wanted to see him get beat up. And at the time, and I kind of got caught up in that too, but at the time, I didn't realize that until much later that that was all part of the shtick or the act, much like in pro wrestling. That it was Muhammad Ali did what he did to be the most famous boxer and actually most famous sports figure in America. Um, and that's why he did the things that he did and said the things that he did. And towards the when he quit fighting and towards the end of his life, Muhammad Ali, everyone loved Muhammad Ali, because he people appreciated what he did and what he brought to boxing and what he brought to America because he was such an entertainment figure that that people realized much later after the fact that that was all on purpose and so yeah you get tired of seeing him on covers of magazines and stuff but but what you disliked or hated about him in the 60s and 70s you learned to love about the guy later in life and he's no longer with us but he was a very smart individual very brilliant man and he demanded exposure and and attention and he got it he was on the cover of so many magazines and you saw his face all the time, but that was on purpose. And I guess you could say the same um, about other, some other, you could say other sports figures were on the cover of magazines a lot too, but like Michael Jordan or Wayne Gretzky or players, but that was because they were so good. They weren't trying to attract attention or demand exposure. They just got it because they were so good at their craft. Um, in rock, you get back in the '70s. I mean, Kiss was on the cover of lots of magazines, and not everybody liked Kiss. Kiss was hated by parents, and but now everyone loves Kiss. It's kind of like the Rolling Stones in the '60s. People hated the Rolling Stones because they were kind of rebellious and grungy looking. Now everyone loves the Stones. They're still going here. 60 years later, Mick Jagger is 80 years old and he's still touring for crying out loud. Um, You know, it's like everyone loves the Stones now. Everyone loves Kiss now because they're still going, and you know, people get it now. They get what the makeup was all about, and you know, it wasn't about satanic worship or you know all the rumors that were flying around in the '70s. So, um, yeah, you know, faces that were on the covers of magazines back in the '60s and '70s, yeah, and people were maybe hated because they got too much exposure. And you know, I'll even admit I got tired of seeing Gene Simmons' tongue on the cover of every magazine I saw. But now you know you understand. You know, it was to sell magazines. That was the reason you saw these people is because people would buy the magazines, and 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 that was the purpose of it. You know, if they would have shown um, you know, somebody from a different band on the cover that nobody cared about, that wouldn't sell any magazines. So, you know, that was the purpose. That's why you always saw Hulk Hogan on the cover of magazines because people would buy that. If they saw Ricky the Dragon Steamboat on the cover of a magazine, people maybe wouldn't buy that one, but you put Hogan on the cover of a magazine and people are going to buy it. So it's kind of what's hot at the time and what's maybe annoying people at the time because people are going to buy it whether they like that person or not.
See, I was expecting you to say like David Cassidy or something. Uh,
Well, I was never really into buying magazines for that reason. That was more targeted at teenage girls, like your mother, for example. She wanted to enter a contest once to um, I don't remember if you got a chance to meet David Cassidy or if you got an autographed picture of him or something. And so your mother, my wife, wrote a letter as a young girl. I think she was a middle school girl at that time to try to win whatever it was to win this contest. And her mom, your grandma, wouldn't give her a stamp to to mail her entry and try to win this contest. And your mother told me this story and said she was so upset that she could not have a stamp to mail her entry. And I'll have to ask her when we get off the air what that was even for or what she was trying to win. But I know it had something to do with David Cass.
did you ever mail in anything or try to do some contest when it came to magazines?
I did. I entered a contest for to win Kiss's new album. Uh, I wound up buying it anyway, but um, I don't remember what magazine it was through. But I sat down and wrote a thoughtful letter, and I think I mailed it on the day the contest expired. So my letter probably didn't even get there in time. And if they had, you know, tens of thousands of entry forms, they probably never even saw mine.
Which album?
I think at that time it was probably either Dynasty or Unmasked.
So I was going to ask you that when it came to rock magazines, Sports Illustrated and wrestling magazines, I'm aware of. But what were like rock magazines like? Were they just covering like just random about this member or about this like this concert or this tour, like or the upcoming
Well,
stars?
sure. Rock magazines uh, pretty much um, specialized in all facets of rock. So if I picked up a rock magazine because maybe there was an article about Kiss in it, um, I would quickly find out that there would be this magazine would be loaded with pictures and stories of bands I was not even aware of, like Black Sabbath and and the Scorpions. Um, Trying to think of 70s bands. Cheap Trick. I became a fan of Cheap Trick over the years, but in the 70s, I wasn't really aware of them. I wasn't really that up on Queen either. So Queen was really popular. Later, I became a Queen fan, but in the late 70s, I really didn't know that much about them. Styx. although Styx was more of a hair band. They were a 70s hair band that launched more hair bands in the 80s. So Styx wasn't featured a whole lot, but it was mostly, like I said, Black Sabbath, Ozzy Osbourne, and kind of going that direction of real heavy metal. Uh, that was before like Megadeth and oh, I can't think of the one that came that was big in the '90s, but so that was before that time. Um, but of course, Robert Plant's. Why can't I think of Led Zeppelin? There we go. Leonard Skinner. Um, so rock magazines featured those types of bands.
What was the main rock magazine called?
Oh boy, Andrew, I don't even know if I could tell you. Uh, Rolling Stone was it covered a lot. They covered actually more than rock music. They covered all kinds of entertainment. It didn't necessarily have to be rock music. They would do articles about movies and TV shows and comedians. So Rolling Stone was a little bit misleading because most people just thought that was a rock magazine, but it had all different kinds of forms of entertainment. Didn't really get into country, obviously, because country music had its own magazines too, which I think I purchased one or two of, um, basically for my dad because my dad liked magazines too when he had time to read. So yeah, I really couldn't tell you. I think there was no, I do know. I think it was called Hit Parader. Uh, I think that was one of the featured rock magazines at the time. It was called Hit Parader, and I think I still have a few of those around somewhere in my basement or my garage. So yeah, I do remember that now, and they had a few others too. But Hit Parader seems to be the one that I purchased or that stands out in my mind.
So, oh yeah, yeah, okay. I'm looking up right now. I have seen that before. Well, I've seen that font, Hit Parader, and so like I just have like two or three questions left, and we're gonna wrap up today. Thank you for your time and thank you for listening. Sports Illustrated, that's a main magazine. When it comes to other main magazines like Rolling Stones, did you kind of read Life or Time or Mad Magazine? Because there's a lot of random ones out there, but like the ones that are still kind of around to this day, was that like any interest of you?
I never bought a Mad magazine. I would look at them on the newsstand because some of them were kind of funny.
Mhm.
Um, uh, Mad magazine was um, kind of Saturday Night Live in cartoon form. I guess is how I would describe it. Although Mad magazine has been around longer than Saturday Night Live. Uh, Matter of fact, they made something called Mad TV for a while, and I don't. I used to watch that. I think it used to be on Friday nights in the 2000s. I don't know if that's still around anymore or if it's in syndication or what. Mad Magazine was actually it was a fun magazine. It wasn't anything I ever purchased, um, and I guess uh, to answer your question, Time and Newsweek would have been the two major world magazines or political magazines. Um, you could usually see those everywhere. Um, let's see, there was one other one that I was thinking about. Um, what was your question again? Are predominant magazines back in that era?
Yeah.
Uh, is that what your question? Oh, Life and Look. There used to be. My parents did get Life magazine for a while when that was a weekly magazine, and and that was kind of a so it covered um, world events. It wasn't like Newsweek or Time, but it did cover things that were happening in the world. I remember looking, my parents kept their issues of Life magazine when John F. Kennedy was shot in 1963, and I can remember looking. They didn't keep the whole magazine. They cut off the cover and the article of Kennedy being shot, and and I remember looking through the I read the article and I remember looking at the pictures and stuff, and it was this glorious sunny day in Dallas in 1963 in November, and there's John F. Kennedy and his wife Jackie Kennedy, sitting in this convertible and waving at people, and then all of a sudden there's pictures of his head, and it's just kind of a blur, but you can see all this red, from blood splattering from his head, and they were just very. They weren't graphic pictures, but I mean, you knew what they were all about, and and my parents kept the magazine, and I'm grateful that they did because I would have only been 1 year old at the time, but when I wrote a report in high school about the assassination of JFK, as a sophomore in high school, I I had access to look back at this magazine, and they also kept the newspapers, uh, the St. Paul paper, of the very same thing, and also when uh, Jack Ruby shot Lee Harvey Oswald, they kept the cover of that newspaper, and it was so awesome to see that as it actually happened. Again, I was only one at the time in 1963, but to see these magazines and newspapers that my parents had saved, and maybe that's where I got it, Andrew, is uh, being the pack rat that I am when it comes to newspapers and magazines and keeping them, because I found out my parents did, of important events, of when man walked on the moon. I'm pretty sure they had the newspaper of that, and they saved stuff. And when I got to be a teenager and needed it for school, as reference stuff, we didn't have Google Map or Google on a smartphone to look back at stuff. We had to rely on periodicals that your parents saved, or seeing stuff at the library, and maybe they had old magazines or encyclopedias or something that you could look things up. We didn't have smartphones or Google, so I'm so grateful my parents saved that stuff. So maybe that's why I've saved stuff over the years, not just for my use, but so you guys could look at it too, even though you don't really need to because you have Google and YouTube.
Yeah, definitely. And that's something where we didn't have internet growing up for a while until I was maybe a sophomore. And I would have to tell people that my teachers that when we do a report, I'm like, can I use the internet at school? Or I would just look at magazines or try to like maybe a encyclopedia. We didn't really have a lot of options. Um, Last question today before we wrap up today's episode, because you know what, guys, go check out magazines. Like go to Barnes and Noble, check out magazines. There's a legit, if it's stand-up like comedy, scary movies, like weightlifting, like there is magazines for every genre of music, every genre of movie. And I really learned this when I was in high school and my mom was trying to find, we went to a Home Depot. I didn't know why we were in Home Depot, and she's like, I'm trying to find this magazine called Mother Earth News. And it's just about like gardening and then designing your kitchen. And I'm like, holy cow, there's legit someone's taken the time to print a magazine of everything. So my last question to you today, and then you can say whatever you want when it comes to magazines. When we did our wrestling magazine episode back in September, and then we recapped it for our 50th episode anniversary, you said your favorite thing was to look at the ratings or the rankings. In wrestling magazines, they would do like the top 10 performer, male and female and tag team of each promotion with the champion. So that was like a fun thing that you would kind of go to right away when you're looking at wrestling magazines. Rather if it's Sports Illustrated or rock magazines or People magazine, what was like a fun thing that you would rather go to first? or you would look forward to flipping to in magazines back when?
Well, it was usually the cover story. If it was Sports Illustrated, like I said, if the Vikings or Twins or North Star, I can't remember the North Stars ever being on the cover of a Sports Illustrated magazine, but the Twins were, the Vikings were. I would go to the cover story, and if they weren't on the cover, I would still flip from from page one to the final page to see if there was any other articles that might be in the magazine about my local teams, because that was the fun thing to do. I enjoyed Sports Illustrated anyway, but I was always looking forward to finding my local favorite, my Twins, my Vikings, my Gophers, because that's part of the excitement of getting the magazine every week. As far as other magazines, again, if I bought a rock magazine, it was specifically to see the newest information on my favorite rock band, which was Kiss. So um, if I bought that, that would be the first thing I would look for, was the article or the feature on Kiss, and sometimes I wouldn't even look at anything else in the magazine. Um, Same with People. I was never a a People magazine fan. I was going to say a People person, but I didn't want to confuse people. I was never a People magazine fan. Um, I mean, their articles are okay, um, but if I picked up a People magazine, your mom actually, I got subscriptions for her over the years because she loves People. Um, I never really thought it was uh, a great magazine. I would get it if there was something I wanted to read or see in it, but yeah, I can't really think of anything that I would flip to other than the cover story or something specifically I got the magazine for. Um, as far as other magazines, yeah, there wasn't just wrestling magazines. I had my go-to, like you said, the ratings, the rankings, but other magazines, it was more or less Sports Illustrated. I would read from cover to cover, especially when I was single. But other magazines, it would be I could spend $3 or $4 on a magazine and just look at maybe two things in there, and that'd be it. So um, if I went and found that magazine now in my garage or my basement and looked at it, I'd probably go, "Oh yeah, I remember buying the magazine to read this story, but I didn't even know this other stuff was even in here." So, because I didn't really care about that, I would buy the magazine for one thing specifically, and that was it.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. I see I was the exact opposite. If it was like highlights magazine, I'm looking at like the picture, like find it in the picture, like find these like items in the picture. Wrestling magazines, I was always going to like the quizzes at the end or the pay-per-view results. Sports Illustrated for kids, they would do this thing where they would put like a baseball card or a football card and kids would write in funny captions to match the pictures of the cards. So in People magazine, I always want to see whose birthday it was, what celebrity's birthday it was. So when it came to like quizzes and like results and stuff like that, that was always my goal too. Um, and look at this, another result, another episode that we filmed here. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you guys for listening. Always subscribe here as we wrap up today's episode. That that 70s pod. It's gonna be that 80s pod soon, is the rumor. Well, the rumor between us. So that's that 70s pod with Bryan Lee here on YouTube. Check out our sponsors in the description below. Subscribe, comment, fave, like, whatever you want to do. Share, go back to our archives and listen to all of our past episodes. We're uploading this right now, episode 55. Last week we did fishing with my dad. That's episode 54. Really good, like wholesome, close to the heart episode. And we hope every episode is, as Bryan always says, maybe it's something you're like, oh yeah, I haven't really thought of that before because you know what? Magazines were a part of my life, and I never really put a deep thought into it from my day to day until I'm actually sitting down and just talk about magazines. So that was a really nice memory to have. And I hope, Brian, this really triggered some memories for you, some good memories that is. Um, go back and read some magazines, go back and listen to some episodes. It is thundering pretty bad out here. Hopefully my Wi-Fi doesn't cut out. But Brian, last final thoughts when it comes to today's topic.
Well, primarily, our topic was about Sports Illustrated. We got talking about other magazines as well, which was fine because, like you said, Andrew, magazines are a huge part of our lives, of everybody's lives. You know, some people like just picking up a book and reading a book. I I'm not one of those people because I don't have a lot of time or the attention span to read a 300-page book, unless it's something that I really, really, really want to read about. Like I just finished a book um, not real long ago about yeah, I don't even remember what the book was about. I think it was either about the Twins or the Vikings. And now I'm working on a book about the Vikings right now, the 50 greatest players ever for the Minnesota Vikings. Um, and I can't even remember the book I just finished up a little while ago. Oh yeah, it was about a sports writer for both the St. Paul and Minneapolis papers. He put out a book, and I read it, and yeah, it was okay. But usually, I don't read books. I prefer magazines. I prefer newspapers. Um, um, but it's a part of everyone's life, whether you like books, magazines, newspapers. I deliver the St. Paul Pioneer Press a couple of days a week to people. I've been doing it for 27 years, and I still have customers from day one that still get that newspaper because certain people just like that daily newspaper. And to me, that's just amazing that I've been bringing them their newspaper for 27 years, and they'll get it until the day they die. And that's how I've lost a lot of customers because they've literally passed away and don't get the paper anymore because they are no longer here. They are no longer with us. But like I said, we started this episode talking about Sports Illustrated, and my biggest regret to people listening, Andrew, is that Sports Illustrated is not something that people can enjoy any longer on a weekly basis because somewhere along the line, it was probably during COVID that they decided that they weren't going to be a weekly magazine anymore. And they just put out a monthly magazine now that maybe will preview the upcoming football season or baseball season or college basketball. That's what they do now. And they put out commemorative issues like Sports Illustrated and the Olympics and that sort of thing. But it's really sad. It's really sad that uh, people that maybe aren't even aware that Sports Illustrated was a weekly magazine, or maybe they used to get it in the 70s and 80s, but quit getting it at some point in their lives. Maybe don't even know it's not a weekly magazine anymore, and it's really sad because it was the coolest thing to see that magazine in your mailbox, whether you were a single guy, a single gal, or a kid growing up, and your parents got a subscription to it, and seeing that with the stack of mail on the table when you got home from school, that was just the most awesome thing to see that beautiful colored magazine. And one thing that I've always wanted, Andrew, and I've never even shared that with you, is I would like to track down the coverage of the 1965 World Series when the Twins played the Dodgers because I was only 3 years old. And I'm sure Sports Illustrated started in 1957, so I'm sure they had a World Series issue of the Twins and Dodgers in 1965, and I'd like to get a hold of that sometime. So if you ever see that, let me know. and I will certainly pay whatever to get a copy of that issue of Sports Illustrated from the '65 World Series. But well, like I was saying, it's a shame that you can't get Sports Illustrated on a weekly basis anymore because they don't do it anymore. But it was certainly cool in the '70s as a kid to see that magazine every week and and see pictures of different teams and players. Maybe I had a baseball card, a football card, a hockey card, and or maybe saw these teams briefly on TV during the game of the week. But to see it and read about it in a magazine, I that kind of turned me on to reading. And that was important too. Maybe it was a roundabout way of my dad to get me to start reading more instead of just books I had to read at school. Maybe that's why I don't like reading books, is because I had to read so many of them in school, and magazines are just more fun. So that being said, Andrew, thanks for asking me to do this episode weeks and months ago, and I kept saying, "Nah, I don't want to." But now that we did it, I'm glad we did it because Sports Illustrated to this day, I collect those Super Bowl issues, and they're fantastic Super Bowl issues, and they've done commemorative issues on all the Super Bowls. Especially when it was around the time of Super Bowl 50, which means they should be doing one about Super Bowl 60 pretty soon because we're getting close to that. So thanks for listening, everybody. And Andrew, why don't you take it home this week?
Well, actually, I'm so glad you brought that up because it made me think of like this memory that popped in my mind so vividly. But you're kind of like, again, we're so similar. A lot of people don't really want to watch movies, but they'll watch like they'll want to sit and watch a 3 hour movie, but they'll watch like 10 episodes a row of like their favorite TV show. And you're kind of like me. You don't want to read a book or read like this book or that book, but you want to read one genre and then have different um issues of that genre. Rather, if it's a magazine, you sit down and read the newspaper, you would pass us kids like the comics section, and then you would read the sports section, and then maybe like the local section or like something like that. And you're reading sports, but you're reading a different topic of sports every day. And then like, Sports Illustrated, but it's a different topic of Sports Illustrated. I'm that same way. Like, I don't know what movie to watch, but I end up putting on Family Guy and I watch like 10 episodes of Family Guy. Because it's like it's one thing, but it's different avenues of that one thing. So I'm so sorry. I have one last question. Maybe not Sports Illustrated, but I remembered this in my mind. And my question is, what's like the most you talked about that JFK thing. What's the most like impactful magazine cover that you remember seeing, even if it was in the 70s? Because mine was People magazine. It was September 11th. Like after 9/11 happened, I went to the Holiday gas station connected to the Burger King in town. And I remember going to the bathroom and then coming out and seeing a stand of like it was like sunset, right? It was like a yellow background pretty much from what I remember. You can see I think it was one of the Twin Towers smoking, with a bunch of smoke coming from it and ash. And then you saw the other one with the plane coming right towards it. And that was like, I'm pretty sure it was People magazine. But even now to this day, me being in my 30s, that strictly pops in my mind of like that, and then I think when Paul Newman, as weird as that sounds, passed away. I remember that People magazine vividly. Um, and then when Farrah Fawcett passed away, like there's just certain covers that like really strike in my mind. You just reacted there. Do you have an answer?
Um, I really don't. There's, I guess, and we've talked about this on our Miracle on Ice
Yeah.
episode. Um, that's probably the greatest picture I've ever seen of anything. Where and again, Sports Illustrated put that on the cover. They didn't even have to put any words on there. I mean, everyone in America knew. Uh, they won that game, and it was in. They won the gold medal on a Sunday, and it was in that issue on Friday that came in the mail, and there it was, the glorious picture of the United States hockey team celebrating after they beat Russia in the semifinal game. I mean, nobody even cared about the final game against Finland because the big thing was beating the Soviet Union, and that was on the cover of Sports Illustrated. It was such a great picture. There was so much emotion in that picture, and and I'm sure there's others too, but that one would be the one that stands out in my mind.
Okay, well, thank you for answering that question for me. I want to get that in because we talk about these memories, and I was like, oh, we're not even really focusing on the covers because National Geographic has the yellow, like the border, and then Time Magazine always has like the red time. Mad Magazine had that creepy looking cartoon kid that I hated, growing up. I can't think of his name. Um,
Alfred E. Newman.
what was it?
Alfred E. Newman.
I never knew that before. I remember seeing the good and bad, like the good spy and bad spy, a part of Mad Magazine. But like Sports Illustrated has their font. We even have our font in our logo that we use on that 70s pod. We thank you guys for listening. You're right. Magazines are such a you could still go Barnes and Noble or on Amazon and get some. If there's a magazine you remember, try to find it on eBay or Macari or something. Kind of give yourself a good memory. Do something different for yourself of like, hey, I remember that Tiger Beat or that J14 magazine or whatever the case is. Order something, give something new. Um, Last week we talked about going outside, and then like taking care of your pets and all. Just kind of there's these things that are in our lives. Seriously, do not take anything for granted, like at all. And I'm not saying possessional items mean anything, but if you like to collect magazines, at least take that time to get a magazine and just sit down by yourself and read it. If you show me your Kiss, Rocky, you can find magazine everything, and you're like, oh, like I haven't seen that TV show in years. Let me get this collector's item. What is that? A MASH magazine. See, Life magazine does a lot of good tributes. I saw a Garfield one the other day at CVS, and like I want to just get it, even though I didn't. I'm not a Garfield fan, but I was just like I kind of thumbed through it a little bit, because a lot of magazines are what you said. They're not weekly issues unless it's like a muscle and fitness or something like that. But a lot of them are just kind of one-offs, like the top 50 heroes of all time, or like this movie, or just a magazine based off of this television show or this country singer. So, buy a magazine. If it's at the checkout lane, do an impulse buy. Subscribe, listen to our past episodes. Um, just do something different for yourself in life. And we hope that you guys enjoyed this episode. Bryan, thank you so much. It's storming here in Orlando, as I said. We are going to sign off. This is episode 55. We have a few more left before we reach episode 60. And I'm guessing episode 60 is when we're going to start transitioning to that 80s pod. But right now, we're still focusing on the 70s. Thank you once again, everybody. Signing off from stormy, thunder, loud, raining really hard Orlando. This is Andrew. You guys take care, and I'll talk to you and record with you next week, Bryan.
All right, bye bye, Andrew.